On this week's Eastern Conference edition of Locked On NHL, the dust is settled on Patrik Laine's trade to Montreal. We'll get into how it affects the Canadiens in both the short and long term. We'll get into Cole Sillinger re-signing in Columbus. The RFA is staying put, unlike two out west, but with the offer sheets between St. Louis and Edmonton, is this going to be a trend we see more and more across the league? That's all coming up on this week's Eastern Conference edition of Locked On NHL. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On NHL, your team every day. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we have local experts on the biggest stories 5 days a week. And what off season? Wow, what a trade over the weekend. We've got so much to get to within that and the offer sheets we saw out west. But first, let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. What a great deal. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me 5 days a week over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. With me, as always, it's a Battle of Ontario edition from Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs. It's Mike DiStefano. And Mikey, that ad read right off the top, it just makes me so fired up. Sports are around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, we got football coming up in a matter of a couple of weeks, and then a couple more weeks after that, you'll start with NHL training camps, and then a couple more weeks after that, it's the real deal puck drop for week 1, game 1 of the NHL season, game 1 of 82 for a lot of clubs. So we're inching very, very close. I always I'm here in Toronto, and whenever the X rolls around, the CNE is usually when it's time to start thinking about the new year in terms of the sporting calendar, and post Labor Days coming up, which means football, hockey, basketball, the baseball postseasons coming up. So we're still a couple of weeks away from the madness, but it's getting here pretty quick, Ross. And we've had a lot. It looks like the DM in the league have come back from vacation. So we've had a lot of stuff get done over the last little bit.
And it's been nice. They've been saving them for, well, in last week's case, midweek, where Austin Matthews was given the captaincy in Toronto. We covered that extensively. Now, this week, we're heading to the other superpower in Canada, the Montreal Canadiens. And it's the third offseason in a row where Kent Hughes has taken a big swing on a trade in August. And this time, he lands maybe one of the most polarizing players in the National Hockey League, Patrik Laine, who's really jumped on the scene after being the second overall pick in 2016, after Austin Matthews scoring 40 goals as a rookie with the Winnipeg Jets, and really a fan favorite. I'm based in Winnipeg, and you still hear people talk about Patrik Laine. You still see number 29 Laine jerseys out on the outdoor rinks in the winter. He really made an impact in his time here, but after being traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois, just felt like maybe the fit wasn't there in Columbus. And Laine spoke about that, not only his off-ice struggles, which he's been very vocal and trying to make change in that aspect with his charitable endeavors, and just posted a video a couple weeks ago trying to spread awareness and all that about mental health. It's all great things, but what he needed was a fresh start, and he's going to get one in Montreal, and he's going to get every chance to succeed. What was your initial reaction when you found out about the trade, and how do you think it will impact Montreal, with Laine having 2 years left on his contract at $8.7 million?
I thought it was a pretty good deal on, for all three parties, for Patrik Laine to end up in a good market like Montreal, where he can, get back to playing hockey and being a star player that he proved that he was early in his career. So get a chance to get back to that. The Montreal Canadiens, I mean, yes, they took on a risk by bringing him in, but didn't cost them anything. Cost them Jordan Harris, which they had a log jam on defense anyways. So there was just going to be a mass competition for like a third pair defensive role. Well, now you can get one of your youngsters to come in and fill that void instead. And they got a second round pick for taking on the full freight, the full $8.7 million. And, it's a team that doesn't have a lot of guys to sign over the next couple of years. So it's not going to impact what they could do re-signing guys in their cap situation over the next couple of seasons. So, I thought that it was a really a good move for Montreal. Not a lot of teams were willing to take on the full cap hit of Patrik Laine. But if this guy can get back and stay healthy, like health has been both, mental health and physical health have been an issue for him the last couple of seasons, which has been a reason why he has not been the superstar that he was early in his career. But if he can find, his love for hockey again, find his passion and stay on the ice, stay healthy, I think the Montreal Canadiens are getting a good player. Like they're getting a great player. Like, let's be honest, Patrik Laine is an unbelievable goal scorer when he's playing his best. And when he's healthy and on the ice, you usually get his best. We'll see what ends up happening, but I think Montreal very, very well. Steve, gave themselves a nice little secondary score next to Cole Caulfield.
Very similar players in the way they shoot the puck, though. It'll be interesting to see how they are divvied up time on the power play in Montreal. With Patrik Laine, look, 6 goals, 9 points in only 18 games last season. But his 2 middle seasons in Columbus were phenomenal. 56 and 56 during the 21-22 season. And then in 55 games, 52 points. Not this past season I mentioned, but the one before. So that's still a guy with 108 points in a 111 game sample size that really proves that he is an elite talent in the league. This is one, and Toronto would be the same, but you look at these big markets, they can take risks like that. Columbus needs an $8.7 million player to be a sure thing, right? They need it to be a top 6 player more nights than not, whereas Montreal can say, look, Jordan Harris was a 2nd round pick. We can get one back for him. That's nice in and of itself. Now we can take this lottery ticket, and if it hits, I mean, this is the super max jackpot, and Laine could be a huge piece to getting Montreal back into a meaningful game situation. It's not going to be the be all end all, but with their Carey Price situation, with his contract being LTIR, you have the flexibility and you have the financial capability. So I love this swing for Montreal. There's really no downside, especially when you look at the only 2-year term on it. Like, they're okay with paying guys as long as it's short term, and they've got some contracts like Josh Anderson, Brendan Gallagher that are probably higher than what those players are worth right now. But with all their young talent still on their entry level or just getting out of those entry level deals, like I said, I love the swing for Montreal, and whether it works or not, they still kind of broke even if they get a 2nd round pick for Jordan Harris, who I think, hey, Columbus fans, I think he's going to be an everyday player for sure, and could have upside to play on your top 2 pairs.
Yeah, but certainly he's the 3rd pair guy. He's an NHLer at the
right
very
now,
least,
for sure.
So
He's a never touched the AHL guy, which is pretty rare to see for not those high end guys. He went straight from college to the NHL.
Yeah, so I think, Columbus, you're getting a piece that's going to be useful, and you're moving on from a situation that didn't really work out for either Laine or the Blue Jackets, and they get, cap space, which they use some of it already to sign one of their young RFAs, and I'm sure there'll be another move or two that Dom Waddell will end up making over the next couple of months here to, as we get closer to the season, and maybe use it to weaponize cap space and acquire more picks and prospects to kind of retool, rebuild that thing. But, I think it'll work out for all parties.
Well, the Columbus Blue Jackets did make another move. Just this morning on Wednesday, they signed Cole Sillinger to a 2-year contract extension. We'll tell you more about that. And NHL offer sheets. So fascinating, where a restricted free agent can sign with any team for a certain level of compensation based on how much the contract is. And it's a bit faux pas, it seemed. But yesterday, Doug Armstrong squashed those rumors. But was it just talk, or could we really see more of these going forward? Those conversations are next. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors. That's according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Indeed doesn't just help hire faster. 93% of employers also agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. That again, according to a recent Indeed survey. They leverage over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day. Their matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Because you're a listener of this show, Locked On NHL, you'll get a $75 sponsored job credit to get more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now, and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On NHL. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire? You need Indeed. Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. We have local experts on the biggest stories 5 days a week here at the Locked On Podcast Network, including Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs, Locked On Ottawa Senators, Locked On Montreal Canadiens, and Locked On Columbus Blue Jackets. We'll get back to the Cole Sillinger signing in the next segment, but I want to talk about offer sheets across the NHL. The last three have not been matched. Before the double dip by the St. Louis Blues to get Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, it was another former first-round pick. So there's another trend emerging. Broberg goes 8th overall. Holloway, I believe, was 12, 13 in that first-round pick back in 2020. And it was Jesperi Kotkaniemi from the Montreal Canadiens who signed his ticket with the Carolina Hurricanes. Some thought that was just revenge for Montreal, giving a very signing bonus heavy offer sheet to Sebastian Aho a few years before that. But now 3-4, I mean, these are all in a short order, Mikey. Is this now a trend that offer sheets are a tool being used by general managers?
I hope so. I mean, we've been clamoring for it for years. This is a tool, a way to make your team better, to acquire young talent, to get good players onto your squad. And if you have the cap space and you have the plentiful picks, why not? I've always not understood why more teams do not take advantage of this of these opportunities. And I think it's good for the players. I mean, look how much money Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway got. I mean, there are reports that Edmonton was looking to get these guys both locked up for somewhere in the ones. Broberg got 4.5, and Holloway's at what, 2.3 in that range. So both of them end up with significantly more than, the hard ball that the Oilers were playing with. And now they are St. Louis Blues. And it sounds like yesterday I was hosting Overdrive and we had Ryan Rishaug on from Edmonton, and it sounds as though their agent was kind of shopping them around as a package deal. And there were more than one team reportedly that were considering making the double offer sheet. It sounds like St. Louis was the highest bidders. But if that's the case, then maybe it does sound like more teams are starting to think about making that more of a regular occurrence. And man, I'm here for it as an NHL fan, as someone who covers and reports it. I mean, this is something that we need throughout the summer, right? These random revenge offer sheets gives us a little bit of content, but I also think that it's what kind of drives some conversation in the summer during a dead time, so that people are always talking about hockey, talking about the NHL. I think it's good for the sport on and off the ice. So I hope that's the case, Ross. I really do.
Yeah, so do I. I think as long as it's not against my team, then go to hell if you're coming at our guys. But no, and all jokes aside, I think it's more so to get your own players signed quicker. You won't have to worry about this. And look, I look at the example, the team I cover, the Ottawa Senators, with Shane Pinto. I think it was a similar situation where the agent was shopping around for an offer sheet. Pierre LeBrun reported that on the morning of July 1st. That, look, Ottawa was in a bit of a cap crunch, and Shane Pinto felt like he had probably served his dues of the suspension because he had to sign a league minimum ticket for the rest of last season after missing out for a fault of his own, but he missed out on his first half of the season pay. So it's like, all right, we want to make as much money as possible. You understand that. So all of a sudden, a little bit of maneuvering goes on and they get the deal done 2 days later. But I think we could have seen another offer sheet there this summer. And I know some RFAs are protected against it. And I don't think you're going to see like the big splashes. Like, I don't think you're going to see, I know Slavkovsky just signed an extension, so he won't get to RFA, but like those top 5 picks
like
or guys
most Sider right now who's still
correct.
out there. You
Or
could
Lucas
offer
Raymond
sheet
as
him.
well.
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
Like your compensation is so much that are you willing to lose 4 first-round picks or 3 and a second? Like, I don't think we're going to see them in that. I think this $4 million range where you're only giving up a second-round pick is probably the ideal cost versus benefit area, because otherwise it can get a little out of control. I think when you're giving up, even if it's a first, a second, a third, like that's 3 shots at getting, a pretty good player in the draft. So I think from that standpoint, I'm not sure if we'll see it become a prominent trend, but I certainly wouldn't mind seeing, a couple every offseason. I think it could make for a little bit more excitement like we see in the NBA, where it really feels like summer's just as engaging, just as active throughout it as it is maybe for hockey. It's like 1 week at the start of July, but
Yeah.
we could
Yeah.
extend that out.
I'll take that. Couple offer sheets throughout the summer each year. I'll take that for sure. Taking a look at the compensation. So
Yeah, where does
anything
it all cut
under
off?
So anything under 1.5 million and under, no compensation, which is I've
Okay.
never understood why teams don't utilize that. Like, in Toronto, I've talked about this before. Like, if you're a team, like the Leafs do not want to pay Nick Robertson $1.5 million this year. They just simply do not want to do that. But if you're a team who can afford to do this, why not offer sheet him at $1.5 million? There's no compensation you'd have to give up for it, and you get a free asset. I mean, it costs you cap space, but if you're a team like, I don't know, San Jose, let's say, or Anaheim, who has space and could use, another talented young winger or, roster piece, why not do that? I've never quite understood why teams don't do that more often, for these lower tier RFAs as well. But then you start to get into compensation at 1.51 million to 2.29. That's a third round pick. So that's right. And they got right up to the cusp of that is where the Edmonton Oilers got to, or the
Holloway.
St. Louis Blues got to with Holloway. They gave him $2.29 million. And then it's 2.29 plus to 4.58 is a second rounder. And then 4.58 million to 6.87 is a first and a third round pick. And then once you get over that, you're talking multiple draft picks. If you can get below 9.16, it's a first, second, and third. But I would argue, Ross, like if you're looking to get a deal done with like Mo Sider, let's say. I mean, what do you think a Mo Sider deal would cost right now? If you're to sign him to, let's say, a 3-year deal or something, or a 2-year deal even, what's that going to cost you?
Well,
Maybe in the 6s, 7s.
I think high 6s, low 7s. I mean, we just saw Matty Beniers. I know a different position, but he just signed for over 7. And if you're looking at like value to his
7-year deal
team,
though. 7-year deal. 7-year deal
yeah,
though. But if you're
yeah,
signing like a short-term 2-year deal, could you get him at 6 point? Probably not, because you got to make it. You got to scare off Detroit, right? That's kind of the point.
exactly.
So could you maybe sign him at 9 million? 8.8 million. You're giving up a first, second, and a third. I think he's well worth that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also depends what team, right? It can't be a Columbus that's doing that, because that first round pick could still be top 5, even with Sider. Like, you got to be sure that you're getting a guy and only giving up a last half of the first round type pick where you think you have a playoff team and should be there. But either way, I think it's exciting. It adds another layer. And I think it's a good thing for the game to have as much, I shouldn't say as much transactions, because you do want that continuity that fans can latch on to within their own organization and their own players, like we see across the league with kind of folk heroes, if not for a better term. But it is a fun wrinkle to the NHL, and it's nice to see it being utilized. Not in Cole Sillinger's case, as the young forward re-signed with Columbus, a 2-year contract. What does it mean? What is his potential? That and more. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. All you need is a Google account and current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook.
Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, local experts on the biggest stories. You can find me 5 days a week over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. Mike DiStefano is with Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs. Cole Sillinger is still with the Columbus Blue Jackets. His dad probably gave him different advice than his own career, where his dad, Mike Sillinger, famously have played for more teams than anyone else in National Hockey League history. Mike, how many teams can you name that Mike Sillinger played for?
Mike Sillinger, well, I know he played for the Islanders. He
Yes.
played for Washington at one point. I think he played on Edmonton, didn't he?
No, he didn't play for Washington.
Why do I remember him playing? I was thinking of Michael Nylander, the other walking, talking suitcase, actually. Sillinger played for Detroit. For sure. Did you have
you already missed. You already missed. You're done. You know how many teams he played for? We'll do a guess on the overall though.
Okay.
How many teams do you think Mike Sillinger played for in his 17-year, 1,049 game career?
Didn't he play for like 10 teams? 9 teams?
12.
He didn't play for Detroit?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, okay. I thought you said you're done. I'm like, wait, what? Like,
you're done when you said Washington. He played for 12 teams. I'm not going to let you get some wrong and keep going.
Wow. Okay. I was thinking teams. Michael Nylander. I was thinking Nylander for a second.
Oh,
I had to
man.
get my father-son lineage correct. Nylander was a long-time capital.
And he only played, out of 12 teams, he only played less than 2 years for 3 of them. Like, he was just a 2-year guy, and he'd move on to his next stop, but not his son, not Cole. Cole is staying put in Columbus, the team announcing it's a 2-year, $4.5 million contract, so a $2.25 million AAV. Last year, Cole Sillinger took a step back towards where he was as a rookie in the season, or in his rookie season when he had 30-some points, and then really fell off 2 years ago, but last year, he was right back in that, 14-goal, 30-point range. You think this is a fair contract for a 21-year-old?
I think I wonder if they got spooked a little based off of the Edmonton situation, and maybe like let's just get this guy signed up. I mean, they got a lot of cap space too, but it feels as though it's a little higher than you would think. Like to me, that's a contract where it's like, okay, you've shown something. I don't know if he's quite shown anything the last couple of years. His first season was good, but then the last two haven't really been too great. And I would assume that would have been like okay, let's get a show me deal done, maybe a 1 year, 1 million, 1.5 million, and let's see what you got. But to get 2.5 as an AAV over 2 years, I think it's a little high, but hey, go get the bag, Cole. Go get the bag.
Well, I'm just looking at the Columbus Blue Jackets projected lineup at Daily Faceoff, and they've got him at the third-line center position. So if he's going to play that for the whole year, I mean, if you're just looking at slotting, $2.25 million for third-line center isn't bad when he's got some upside. But I'm just curious if there's ever going to be a path forward for him being a top 6 in Columbus, just based on his age versus all the young talent that Columbus is drafting is all kind of right below that. Like Adam Fantilli's obviously already jumped him on the depth chart at center, and there's going to be Caden Lidstrom. There's going to be other guys who kind of come out of that very stacked prospect pool. So I think that I'm looking less at the dollars and more at the term, and I think 2 years is exactly where you want him, because that way you don't have to go through this all over again next summer. You at least get that, and the player gets that lock up knowing that he's guaranteed 2 years. and then you can kind of reassess where the prospect pool and where everybody is after that. But in a vacuum, I like the deal. I think that he's got some upside. He's got a good shot, and he's a hard-nosed player. And I just think that the role he played in junior, where he was a high-flying offensive player that was able to rack up points. His last year in junior was 53 points in 48 games. Then because of COVID, he had to go play in the USHL year early, dominated that league too, and then stepped into the NHL at 18. I think it was a lot of offense there, and now he's learning that to be a good NHLer, he's going to have to change his game a little bit, I think, to be an effective third-line player, and I think this is a fair deal for it.
Well, a lot of players have to end up doing that, right? Like they grow up being the absolute studs of their pee-wee teams. They get drafted high into the WHL, wherever they play junior. They turn out to be the stars of that team. And then all of a sudden you get to the NHL and it's like, okay, this is where everyone's playing at. And now I'm no longer the best player. And now I need to adapt. I need to figure out how can I stick in the NHL. So, Cole Sillinger, he's still young enough where he can still, try and let that skill develop and flourish into a top 6 point producing player. But at some point, kind of like what ended up happening with Sam Bennett, where he had to adapt and become just like a two-way player and kind of become a much different player than I think people expected him to be when he was taken in the 3rd overall slot. Not as big of a point producer as you originally would think of a 3rd overall pick, or fourth overall. Leon went 3rd. But still a high pick like that. So yeah, I think that for sure in the next 2 years, see what you got, kid. You'll have a chance to prove yourself. It's not an overly deep roster. He'll still be making the lineup every single night. He's not gonna, be an odd man on the outside sort of situation. So we'll see what ends up happening on that one. But yeah, there's still a bunch of other RFAs too that still need to get signed. I'm just looking at the list right now. Like we
Jeremy
talked about,
Swayman.
Mo Sider and Lucas Raymond, Swayman, Seth Jarvis, Thomas Harley, Cole Perfetti, Dawson Mercer. Still quite a bit. Phil Tomasino, Arthur Kaliev, Jacob Peltier. There's a lot of like decent players that are in need of some contracts here in the next little bit. But you can check off Mr. Cole Sillinger off that list.
And I have a feeling we'll be chatting about more of these signings next week on Locked On NHL. Every Wednesday, it's the Eastern Conference edition. Tuesdays, we got the West. And tomorrow, more power rankings. Who doesn't like getting mad at a list? You can do that tomorrow with Locked On NHL. For today, we say goodbye. For Mike DiStefano from Locked On Maple Leafs, I'm Ross Levitan from Locked On Ottawa Senators. A reminder that the Locked On Podcast Network has local experts on the biggest stories. I'm talking baseball, football, basketball, hockey, college sports. It's all there for you on the network. Thank you for watching. This has been another edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, your team every day.